or ability to make sense. When God asked, he said yes. If it's your will, then be it done to me as well. And when the infant child was threatened by Herod, Joseph left all that he was familiar with, his homeland, his friends, his family, everything that he was comfortable with. He left the comfort of his experience for the mystery of God, to protect baby Jesus and baby Jesus' mom, Mary. He knew he had to be open to the will and the intent of God, because his life wasn't his own. There was a purpose and an intent that God had willed for him. My friends, when we look at the life of Joseph and we see how purposefully he lived it in terms of being open to the will of God in the protection of the life of Jesus and Mary, we need to be reflective of how you and I are opened to this mystery and how we are protective of the life of another made in the very image of our Creator. And so the question is, how do we help those who are struggling to bring new life into the world? How do we deal with those who are having a hard time understanding the value and the worth of their own lives? And how do we deal with the elderly, the frail, who are coming to the end of their lives? Our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles. How do we deal with them when they see their lives now at the end of their journey as maybe a burden to others, or no longer has any meaning and value? How do we respond to that and affirm them of the value of their lives? You see, we wouldn't have to talk about euthanasia if we were there to affirm the dignity and the wonder and the beauty of the elderly, infirmed life. The infant Jesus came into this world, and he was vulnerable. He was vulnerable in his mother's womb. The incarnate God, in the great mystery, this all-powerful and all-knowing, becomes the most vulnerable human being on earth. That vulnerable child in its mother's womb. What is God teaching us about the child in the womb? That the most powerful, the Creator, takes on the vulnerability of the unborn in the mother's womb. And who defended that child in the mother's womb? Joseph, the protector of the family. He protected Mary. He did not, at any point or time, abdicate his responsibility as husband or as father, as protector of the family. Joseph wasn't a wimp of a man. He wasn't a softy. He knew what he was supposed to do, and he did it because it was the will of God. He protected baby Jesus in the womb and outside of the womb. There was no wishy-washiness with him. It wasn't about what others thought or said or where the culture was. He knew his responsibility. He knew what God expected of him. And he followed through. You see, my friends, every human family has challenges. It's not unique to Joseph to flee with his family to protect them, to protect the baby Jesus. Every human family experiences at some point or another challenges. Challenges is part of the human condition. Just like illness and growing old and dying is part of the human condition. We don't flee it. We open ourselves to the mystery, seeking to understand the intent and the will of God, and to turn, like Joseph did, a challenge into an opportunity to experience the providence of God and God's love for humankind and God's love and desire to reveal to us who are limited in space and time and understanding his truth and his beauty and his goodness and his wonder. Joseph did not try and flee from the challenge. He embraced it because he opened himself to the will of God, the truth of God. And that's his example to us today as the protector of the family. And at the back of the church, our parish here has dedicated the unborn to the protection and the intercession of our patron, Saint Joseph. And so you will see the beautiful icon at the back of the church, a reminder to all of us, a reminder to the men and the fathers to not abdicate their responsibilities as protectors of the family. A reminder that when we open to the will of God, when we unite ourselves to the will of God, our families, our children, the unborn will be safe because we are present. We're not wishy-washy, we're not wimps, we don't roll over. We stand up for life because God wills it and God intends it. The author of life, the giver of life, the sustainer of life. And so the great miracle of Joseph protecting the unborn Jesus and the born Jesus is the great miracle that you and I are called today to share and to give witness to the world, a very confused world, a world that does not understand the immutable truth of our being. And so now I'd like to say a few words on this reading today about marriage. Well, the Pharisees were constantly trying to trick Jesus. But of course, how silly and stupid humankind can be trying to argue with God. And Jesus does not allow them to distract him. And so he does not focus on what is permissible. You know how we so often, but what does the law say? And what does the Constitution say? And what does the Supreme Court says? He doesn't get into the permissibles. He gets into the truth. And so he doesn't get into all the legal controversies. He gets into the ideal, what is true. And so he turns the Pharisees' question about divorce and marriage and all of that in the context of the creation story. And he says, God made humankind in his image and likeness. And he gifted us with sexuality as male and female, the intent of God, so that we may express the will of God in word and deed. And so as male and female, in the very beginning, God had gifted humankind so as to continue the procreation of humankind. God is deliberate, intentional with his gifts. And every gift that God gives has a purpose and an end. In the book of Tobit, Sarah marries 7 times, and every time she marries, there's a problem with the marriage, and the men die. And then Tobias comes, and he meets Sarah, but he's afraid to engage with her. He's afraid to develop a friendship with her. He's afraid to get married to her. But the angel Raphael, disguised as a friend, comes to Tobias and says, Tobias, don't be afraid. I can help you destroy the demon that is responsible for the destruction of the marriages of Sarah. There's a demon that is destroying the marriages of Sarah. This is what you must do. And he teaches Tobias and Sarah to go on their knees in prayer before they come together and to ask God, is this part of your plan for me, for us? And saying to God, we don't want to be together just out of a lustful experience. We want to be together, but only if it is part of your plan, so that we may fulfill your intent. That's how they destroyed the demon. You see, marriage preparation is so important. It's so important to discern the will of God. People get married for the wrong reasons. And that's why there's so many problems and challenges in married life today. And then, when they've made a mistake, they continue to seek the advice of another frail human being. Or they rely upon their own strength, their own understanding, and their own knowledge of how to fix this, or to make it better, or to make it work. You see, marriage is not what you and I make. It's not what you and I give to each other. Marriage is a sacrament. We enter into marriage. We receive life. It's the author of life that determines the expression of it. It's the author of marriage, designed for the procreation of humankind, that determines the nature of marriage. And so it is the author of marriage that we should consult and we should seek help from, so that we can destroy the demons that are destroying the marriages. You know, God doesn't make a mistake. Never does God ever make a mistake. Your life is not a mistake. You and I make mistakes. But even when we do make a mistake, God never perpetuates the pain and the suffering of the mistake. God always brings about the good and seeks the good. Brings goodness even out of that when we are open to His will and His truth and His love. I'd like to conclude now by reminding you of that wonderful question that Jesus poses to the apostles. Who do you say I am? And the apostle says, one says, oh, you must be Elijah, the prophet Elijah, and others says, maybe you're just a great man, a great prophet. And you, Peter, who do you say I am?